McCoys were some of the first families in rural Midwestern America to be considered cowboys. They were best cited for their feuds in the late 1900s. But before the McCoys rode off into the sunset, they had to learn how to saddle a horse first. Today, my friend Diesel and I are going to teach you the importance of brushing, bridling, and saddling to getting ready to ride your very own horse. So the first step after we catch the horse is what we like to call brushing. Now because it's springtime, Diesel's going to help me out and we're going to use a shedding blade. A shedding blade, like I just said, is specifically used in the springtime because this is normally when horses will get a lot more muddy and they'll shed a lot more hair. So as you watch and I brush him, you go with the direction of the hair, which is always head to tail, and you can see the hair kind of coming off him as I use this shedding blade. Now, the most important places to brush while you're brushing are here on the back and then getting behind his front legs under his belly in a spot that the girth will go, which is an important piece of the saddle. So it's important to get this area and the area under here because that's where the saddle will sit and that's where the horse will have the most discomfort if there's dirt, rocks, or mud. The second brushing tool that we're gonna go ahead and use year round, it looks a bit like this. There's a couple of different variations, but this is called a hoof pick. Now, it's really important to pick out horses' feet because again, like we talked about with the saddle, there could be dirt and rocks inside. In order to pick out the hoof, you start here at the heel and go towards the toe, making sure that this area especially, which is called the frog, is plenty clean so that the horse won't have any discomfort while you're riding. The next step after brushing and getting a horse ready to ride is what we call saddling. As you can see, we're going to use two different pieces of equipment. This is called a saddle pad, and will go on the horse's back like this. See this area right here? That sits on his withers, and as you can see, the withers are the highest and boniest point of his back. That's where we want to make sure all the pressure is so that it is evenly distributed among his shoulders, and he can take a lot of that weight on his leg rather than on his back. Then, when we saddle, you hold the saddle like this. Always do it from the left side of the horse, just because that's tradition. You're gonna use your right leg to take the saddle and throw it and set it gently onto the horse's back. Then, once your saddle is on the horse, you're gonna fasten it essentially to the horse. You reach underneath the horse in the area we brushed to grab this thing called the girth. Now, there's a special knot that we tie when we're tying on the girth because this is what will keep our saddle on as we ride. When we do this knot, you go through like this to create a 7. Then you take it across to make a 4, go up through the loop and down through the hole. And that is what we call a saddle knot, and that is what helps us to be able to tighten the horse's cinch so that we won't fall off. There's also an extra piece of equipment on this saddle that keeps the saddle from sliding back and forth. This is called the breast collar. Now the breast collar, we're gonna run through this area right here, around this D-ring in the saddle, and then simply hook it like you're hooking a belt. Then in the front, it has this strap that helps keep it in place, and that will go under and hook onto your girth. Now that our horse is saddled, the next thing we wanna do before we get on is put his bridle on. Now the bridle looks like this and consists normally of a headstall, a bit, which is this metal piece, and the reins. As you can see, I've put the reins around Diesel's neck to make sure that he's not gonna go anywhere. I'm gonna hold the headstall open, like so, with my left hand. Then I'm going to grab the bit in my right hand and guide it to his mouth. Then, if you go to the right side, Mel, I'm gonna stick my thumb into his mouth to get him to open his mouth for the bit. Then, once the bit's in his mouth, I just tuck his ears in and we're ready to roll. Your horse is nice and tacked up, we're gonna go ahead and get on. Now Diesel, as you can tell, is a little bit younger, so he's a little skittish about some things. So you wanna make sure and have a hold of the reins with your left hand. Take your left foot and place it here. This is called the stirrup. Then grab onto the horn, which is this part, while holding onto the reins, and lift yourself up and put your leg over the horse. So that's a brief demonstration on how exactly to saddle your horse if you're wanting to ride out into the sunset like the real McCoy. Diesel and I hope you had a very good time and enjoy the rest of your semester.